Okay, so we are going to get started. Some other folks may be joining in, but thank you all for coming into this session. And I hope you had a restorative break. I know it's been a really interesting and action-packed morning so far. So welcome. My name is Marisa Suescun. I am Director of Programs with the Boston Debate League, and I'm going to share my screen. And this session that you're in right now is a Boston Debate League session. We have a program called Debate Inspired Classrooms. We'll explain more about that in a moment. And we will be doing a classroom style activity that we hope that you will be able to connect to your own classrooms and be able to use in your own work. So before we get started, even with the agenda, it would be helpful to know who's in the room. So we're going to do a little warm up. The introduction, I introduced myself, I'm Marisa Suescun. The other two facilitators with the Boston Debate League here today are in the other two Zoom rooms simultaneously. So that is Mary DeBinga, who is an ELA teacher, has been a debate coach and also a teacher leader in this classroom work, and Kim Willingham, who also is a staff member at the Boston Debate League. And so, and again, my name is Marisa. So in a moment, we're just going to take 3 minutes in breakout rooms. So you'll be with maybe three or four other people, and you're going to share your name, what grade or content you teach, or if you have a role that's different from teacher, which I know some of us do, you can share that as well. Where are you joining us from? So I am joining from Boston, Massachusetts, from my living room, as you may be able to see. And something that you're taking from the last session, and I will share even just at the very end when Les was showing how teachers might track arguments as students are making that. That's something that was resonating with me. So in just a moment, I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. I'll also put those questions into the chat so that you have that as well. Any questions before I send you to the breakout rooms? Right, well, here are the chats. All right, and you'll have just about 3 or 4 minutes to introduce yourselves. We'll see you back here. Hi, Alice, did you just join us? Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Marisa Suescun. I work with the Boston Debate League. So we were just getting started and we were going to get to know each other in breakout rooms. So in the chat, I just put the questions and I will add you to a breakout room. Do you see that? Yeah. Hi, Donald. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I'm sorry. I something happened, and maybe it's the wonderful weather here in Louisiana.
Mm.
It's doing that.
Oh, you're joining from Louisiana.
Yeah, I'm from yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
how has that been? I know the weather's been tough there.
yeah, it's kind of a little smack in the face here and there.
Yeah.
I had during when I got hired to coach at with David Trigo at his camp,
Oh
my
yeah.
my floor flooded when all the rain hit. So I had to get new floors for my living room. So it was that was nice. um and yeah, this and it flooded again like in 2016 when Baton Rouge basically flooded out.
Oh,
My entire townhome flooded, so that was also fun. Um, so yeah, Louisiana living, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, that's where it is.
yes. Oh my goodness, that is difficult.
It is, it is. But
Yeah, I know we in the Northeast we've also gotten pretty torrential rains, not like that, but
yeah,
there's a lot of basement flooding that's been happening for sure.
yeah, I heard. I was watching on the news about that. I'm like, wow, y'all got hit. Not horribly bad, but y'all still got hit pretty good overall.
Yeah, and pretty extended as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Just a lot of rain, rain, rain.
yeah.
My car door, we have like a 12-year-old car, and I was like, there's water in this door somehow. So, so that actually fixed. I was like,
uh,
a swishing sound, that shouldn't be.
it's all good.
Well, welcome back. Donald and I were just talking about the rain that's happening in both Louisiana and here in Boston and in the Northeast. So I know some of you are contending with droughts, maybe fires, some of you with torrential rains. So um, thank you all for braving all of that and getting your internet connected somehow so that you can be here. So anything you can put in the chat, just take a minute, anything interesting that you learned either from in your group from another educator here or that you shared yourself. If you want to put that in the chat, feel free. I saw Cassandra, you had already chatted that you're from Queens, New York. I spent about 10 years in Brooklyn, New York, and teaching in the Bronx for a little bit of that time. So I spent a lot of time in Queens eating, enjoying restaurants. So thank you for joining from Queens. And Roger and Radley both teach speech and debate courses that are mandatory for students. That is great to hear. Awesome. Well, thank you again. Part of why we'd like to give a chance for people to meet each other is because what we're going to do today is simulate a classroom environment. And so we do seek to build community, even if it is online and even if it's, for the brief time that we'll be spending together. So thank you for doing that. We will be working in groups again later in this session. So I am going to reshare my screen. And can you all see this? We're seeing the PowerPoint? Mm-hmm. Excellent. So we just did our warm up. We are going to, I don't know if we need this because all of you have gone through a year and a half of pandemic teaching and learning. But just in case, these will be our norms for today. So in the whole group, generally speaking, stay on mute unless you are speaking. And then of course, unmute yourself and speak. And you can raise your hand. You can feel free to use any of the great emojis to show your support or show other reactions you have. We will be doing breakouts as we just did. And so you'll just stay on the breakout room, stay in the platform and you'll automatically be sent back as you already did. When you're in the breakout room, we encourage you to unmute yourself because that's the time for free conversation, discourse, and flow of ideas. And finally, let us offer grace to each other and to ourselves. This is a collaborative journey of learning, as Donald and I were just discussing the challenges of connecting to the internet in torrential rain. So with that, these are our outcomes for the session. We are, as I said, going to step in as learners and experience an activity called a class challenge. Then we will debrief and share insights and strategies as educators about that strategy and other approaches for facilitating student conversation, collaboration, and argumentation. And we hope that you'll be able to plan and try out a similar activity in your classrooms. We don't have planning time in this brief hour, but we hope that you'll have kind of the insights and tools to be able to do that. So this is our agenda here. We're in the opening. We're also going to share a little bit about the BDL before diving into the activity, doing the debrief and closing. Please feel free to put in the chat if there are any questions about the agenda. And actually, as I'm looking, I'm seeing some interesting comments from Santino and Radley around what you took from last session, which is great. And Radley, thank you. Planning time during tomorrow and Thursday, so that is excellent. So just a little bit about the Boston Debate League. We are a nonprofit organization located in Boston, Massachusetts. We've been around, this is our 15th year, our 15th anniversary. We're celebrating this year. We have a vision that all young people in Boston are engaged in critical discourse, informed by evidence, and empowered to lead. And so we work towards that vision through two programs. One of them is an after-school debate where we support schools in having debate teams. And one of them is debate-inspired classrooms, where we work to bring these principles and elements into the classroom. Classrooms where students are engaged in critical discourse, informed by evidence, empowered to lead. And that is what this session is rooted in. Our values are here. And again, we hope that you experience some or all of these values as a learner and then as an educator in this session today. It's how we seek to do our work. We have a commitment that names young people in Boston, specifically young people of color, and those who have been denied educational opportunities, who have experienced education inequity. And we strive to create inclusive learning communities where all participants are welcome, supported in achieving the transformative lifelong benefits of debate. And so again, even in something like this, we seek to create, even if it's a temporary learning community, that we seek to uphold these values and this commitment. And as I mentioned, we have two programs that work towards this vision, these values, this commitment. After school debate, we partner with 41 debate teams in public schools in Boston, Somerville, and Chelsea. Debate-inspired classrooms, we partner with entire schools or significant portions of faculty. And over the past 10 years, we've partnered with 19 schools, all of that in Boston Public Schools. So again, I'm going to keep moving, but please feel free to put in the chat if you have any thoughts or questions. So what is debate-inspired classrooms? It's a program, but it's also an instructional approach, and it does three things. It builds student argumentation skills using the common building blocks of claim, evidence, and reasoning that those of you who are teachers, which I think is everyone here is a teacher in some way, an educator in some way. That's, of course, the language used in the Common Core State Standards, Next Generation Science and Math Standards. That's a universal language of sorts in the education space. It centers student discourse and voice. Students talk more and teachers talk less. And so once we get into the activity, we hope you'll experience that as well. And it also fosters student collaboration. Students are leading and learning from each other. And another word that's not here, but that we hope over time gets built, is actually student agency and ownership of over their own learning. So if those three things are happening, building argumentation skills, student discourse and voice, and students collaborating with each other, then that is a debate-inspired classroom. This is a metaphor we use of a stool. We talk about the claim as the seat of a stool, the evidence as the legs that need to hold up or support the claim, and the reasoning is the glue that links the evidence to the claim, explains how the evidence supports that claim. So we do have a claim, a statement that someone believes to be true, or a statement that must be supported with evidence. Evidence is anything factual. That can be articles, data, pictures, videos. It can be lived experience. It can be, lab data from a science experiment. And then the reasoning is the explanation, the analysis that says, this is how this evidence supports this claim. This is the specific way, or this is how this collection of evidence as a whole supports this claim. We're not going to watch it now. We do have a video that's narrated by a student, kind of uses Xbox and PS1 as an example. So it's a student-facing video that explains this. I'm going to put the PowerPoint in the chat in just a moment, so you'll have that link to the video as well. Just curious if you can sort of give a thumbs up if people teach claim evidence and reasoning in your own classroom. And also, if you have a different metaphor besides a stool that you use to teach that, please feel free to put that in the chat. I'd love to hear other metaphors or approaches. Yes, I'm definitely seeing thumbs up on teaching it. We have a skill progression that builds the argumentation skills. So we talk about skill 1 as building arguments with those building blocks of claim evidence and reasoning. Skill 2 is evaluating arguments, including relevance and sufficiency of evidence. Skill 3 is questioning arguments. Ooh, I'm just checking the chat here. Robert talks about using a bridge, the reasoning as a bridge. Thank you for sharing that. That's a cool metaphor. And it's a nice one visually. Roger also uses the ARE model. If you can put in the chat, Roger, what that stands for. I think I see reasoning and evidence. I'm not sure what A stands for. So, assertion. Thank you, Radley. So that's really helpful to hear. So these are all very comparable ideas, sometimes with different names for them. Going back to the skill progression, after questioning arguments, we have skill 4, which is responding to arguments. That does include counter argument and response to counter argument. So in this activity, we're going to focus on skills 1 and 2, building and evaluating arguments. And we are going to do an activity called a class challenge to do that at a skill 2. And what I just wanted to show you is that we have a suite of 17 activities, 8 of them we call our core activities, and they're designed with different versions to focus on different skills and really target and tailor those skills. So again, we'll do a skill 2 class challenge today. But at the end, we'll share with you some resources where you can see the templates of all these different these activities. And again, they're just sort of starting templates that you can then tweak and tailor and use to your own content areas. And another thing I want to emphasize, we're going to be doing an image today, but this is not a curriculum. These are activities and approaches that are designed to fit into any curriculum. So we'll also show you at the end examples across different content areas, because when we partner with the school, we're partnering with the full faculty to bring this work into math, history, science, ELA, ESL, and the arts. Even physical education we have done. So again, please feel free to put in the chat. That was a lot of me talking, but just wanted to give you a grounding in who the Boston Debate League is. Feel free to put in the chat if there's any questions. And with that, we will move on to our activities. So again, I'm going to invite you to step into this experience as learners, then we will debrief as educators. So we are going to start with activating knowledge, and we're going to use an approach called visual thinking strategies. Anyone has used that before? You can put a thumbs up. It comes out of museum education, but it's great for argumentation as well, analyzing graphs, analyzing images. Okay, cool. Well, I will share this. I don't see necessarily anyone who's said they've used it. Oh, Roger's using it. Awesome. And so is Radley. That's great. And Patricia's used it. Wonderful. All right. So some people have used it. You can, this will be great in the experience and in the debrief to share other ways that you've used visual thinking strategies. So this is the image that we will be exploring today. Watson and the Shark by John Singleton Copley, 1778. Give a little thumbs up or hand raise if you are familiar with this painting. Seeing some shakings of heads. There's no need to be familiar, so there's no pressure. I'm just always curious if people are bringing in Awesome. So we will get to explore this together. That's super fun. Thumbs up, Patricia. That means you are familiar with this. Excellent. Awesome. If you want to use the thumbs up, you can also, I don't know if you know where they are, but if you find the little at the bottom of your toolbar, you'll see little emojis and you can find that. But you can also put thumbs up in the chat if it's a little hard to find. So I'm going to ask the first two questions of visual thinking strategies. So take a look at this image. Ask yourself, what is going on in this picture? And in that, I'm asking you really to make a claim or an assertion. What is going on in this picture? And then what do you see visually that makes you say that? And of course, that's asking for visual evidence. Today, this image will be our evidence, image as text. So I'm going to give you a minute and a half, 90 seconds. Feel free to turn off your screen if you want to. You can jot down any thoughts on a piece of paper, on your computer, or just think about it. What is going on in this picture? What do you see that makes you say that? Take another 30 seconds. Feel free, as some people have already, to put your thoughts in the chat. All right. Thank you for folks who have started to put your responses in the chat. If you need more time, feel free to keep thinking. I'm going to open up to a couple of comments here. I'm going to start here with Mark, who wrote a life and death struggle, answering, that's Mark's claim, what is going on in the picture. Mark, can you tell us, if you want to unmute yourself, tell us, what do you see, what do you mean by that? And also, what do you see in the image that makes you say it is a life and death struggle?
Metaphorical, and it's it's a classic struggle between nature and man, between life and death, between elemental forces in the world, in the natural world.
And what do you see what do you see that tells you death, and what do you see that tells you life?
Well, you have what appears to be a great white shark about to attack a person floundering in the water, which is ironically, it tends to draw sharks, that kind of movement. And I see somebody trying to prevent the shark, both prevent the shark from attacking and also pulling the potential victim of the shark out, attempting to pull the potential victim of the shark out of the water.
Thank you for that. Amber, if you want to add on, I see you have a comment, and it kind of connects a little bit to what, I'm sorry, I missed your name again, who was just sharing. But Mark was just sharing. So Amber, do you want to say a little more about what you put in the chat?
Sure. So just as a upfront, I've not seen this, not to my recollection anyway. But I just found it interesting. You asked the question too, and I know I'm kind of going away from what I just submitted, but what aspects of life and what aspects of death. And immediately I'm like, well, the rope, there's life. And then of course the two men, reaching out, there's, an example of, extending life or opportunity for, the man in the water to be saved kind of thing. But yeah, I just found it interesting that, just looking at the facial expressions on each of the characters portrayed in there. I mean, the man in the water to me just looks really just frozen. And then the men in the boat, some of them are a lot more fearful than others, and some are more kind of blank faces. Like I noticed the guy kind of behind the gentleman who is attempting to maybe stab at the shark, and his facial expression is just kind of very, which I'm like, well, if this was, this, life or death situation, I feel like, anyway, so I was just noticing those.
You're talking about this gentleman right here.
Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
So many good comments in here. Please take a look at the comments. Cassandra, you were talking about this gentleman here, right? What was your observation? Cassandra, if you want to unmute yourself. Okay, Cassandra may not be able to unmute or joining at the time. Patricia, talk to us about the biblical reference. What are you seeing?
It's almost in 3 layers. I am an art history major, so I I have to put that right in front before I start. But this is like a classical kind of arrangement. But I see the bottom is almost like Jonah and the whale, that kind of reference there. And then the reaching over, it looks like almost a deposition. To me, there is the lone black man in the back at the top, and that's often been discussed as to why that person there. So I just see it as a classical in nature, and what's going on is like they're trying to keep the shark from getting to the person that's floating. I know that he went off for a swim. Supposedly it's based on a true story, but the whole reaching over the boat and the grabbing of the individual who's reaching out, and then they're trying to kill the shark as it's approaching. So
thank you for sharing that, and thank you for bringing in the art history, both the visual acuity and also I think you have some background you're sharing on the painting. So I'm actually going to move us to the next slide, because you've talked about breaking this into 3 parts, and so we're going to move to the 3rd question, which does that very thing Patricia just was inviting us to do here, which is breaking the painting into 3 parts and then seeing what more can you find. That's the 3rd question, visual thinking strategies. What more can you find? There's a lot more in the chat that we haven't even discussed. So if someone else wants to unmute themselves and share either something they had in the chat or something more that they see when breaking up the painting in this way. Jesse, can you say more about what you put in the chat?
I don't know if I can say more. Just I think the 3, I saw the crosses first, and then I was just reminded of the power of the number of 3, especially in Christianity, and then the 3 like kind of spiritual planes, I guess, a spiritual plane, a temporal plane, and then a demonic plane in the bottom.
So that's where you're referencing the heaven, the earth, and then the hell.
Yeah, and the shark being the threat.
The shark being the threat. And someone noted, I think Radley, that the shark also, something about the shark having nostrils and things was kind of strange. The shark is depicted with lips and nostrils, which is not found on sharks. Radley was sharing. So thinking about these 3 planes, and you also, Jesse, you referenced the power of 3. Where do you see 3?
For myself,
Yeah.
actually, if you look in the back right corner, that's kind of interesting. The back right corner, you have the three crosses. That reminds me of like the three crosses on the hill of Calvary,
Hmm.
right? With the one being above the other two. That's a very Christian
Hmm.
image there. Uh,
And parallel sort of here.
yeah, you have three men rowing the boat. You have three men trying to help him pick him back up.
Hmm.
I don't know if I see any three on the shark. There's three oars.
Yes. Well, thank you. This is, oh, go ahead. Does someone else want to say something? Sorry, I thought I cut someone off. This is a really rich discussion, and even just in these few minutes of making claims and finding visual evidence, we've moved into pretty deep waters, even just looking at this image in these few minutes. So we are going to keep going in looking at this image, and we're going to do an activity where we make some arguments about this. So our activity is called a class challenge. We are going to, in groups, you're going to co-construct arguments and then evaluate each other's arguments based on this painting. This is the prompt. What theme does the painting Watson and the Shark express most powerfully? And we have 4 claims: horror, heroism, salvation, and cooperation. So in a moment, you're going to be assigned to a breakout room, and you will be assigned to one of those claims. It may not be the claim that you believe. It may not be the one that you feel is the most powerful theme, but that, of course, is part of what we do with students often, is to take a position that may not be our own position. As a note, and this is an important note with students as well, you will get to share what your actual opinion is at the end of the activity during the debrief, including if it has evolved through the course of the activity, because it's important to have a chance to actually share that. But we will ask you to take on the claim that you're assigned, which will be the name of your breakout room. And you are going to build an argument. So you're going to discuss the claim you've been assigned. Also, how is your team defining most powerfully? How is it defining that theme of horror or heroism? And you're going to write evidence that can be seen in the image and reasoning that explains why your theme is the most powerful. So visual evidence and reasoning. The other thing beyond evidence that we've given you is the title and the date, right? So you can use that evidence as well. Some of you may have background knowledge. People are bringing in biblical knowledge, people are bringing in art historical knowledge. So feel free to bring in other background knowledge you have into this. We want to make sure you root it in the image, and if you wish, in the title and the date as well, and things that you can infer from that. Then after you've done that, you're going to come back and we will share out each argument. And the way the class challenge goes is that at the end of that, each group sharing out, we will then vote on which argument we think is strongest. Not which claim we agree with, but which group's argument we think is strongest. So your first task will be, I'm going to share this PowerPoint with you in just a moment. Let's say you're in claim 1, you will work on this slide that says horror is the most powerful theme. So slide 16, you're going to define your terms that you feel need to be defined, evidence from the painting and the title, and reasoning. You can bring in background knowledge as well. Again, we'll give you about 8 minutes or so to do that. Then we'll come back and share out. I'm going to stop sharing here. Any questions on what you are about to do? Put the PowerPoint here. Take a moment to open it. Make sure you can open it. Okay, so you will be in the same rooms that you did your introductory breakouts in. So you'll be about 3 people in each room. And you can feel free to ask for help if you know where that button is. If you'd like me or another facilitator to come in. And otherwise, we will see you back here in 7 minutes. Donald, I'm going to assign you to a room, and Donald actually, because, oh, and
Okay.
Jesse as well.
Okay.
Yes. Bradley, how's it going?
It's going really well.
Oh, good.
Really interesting activity.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's just a fascinating painting.
And I'm glad we have a visual arts example also, because I think we're light on that otherwise.
Oh, good. That's good to know. Donald, are you able to move to the breakout room? If you click on, Donald, if you click on breakout room, you should be able to see that you're assigned. I assigned you to horror. I'm not sure. Donald was having some internet challenges, so it may have pooped out again. Oh, and now he's coming back in. Yeah. Hello, Donald. Welcome back.
For some reason, it's kicking me out. I'll try it again. Hold on.
Okay. Okay, that worked. So Donald's in twice somehow, but one of him is in the breakout room, so that's good.
It's all right.
Yeah. I'm going to turn off my screen for just a moment because I'm going to eat and I don't want you to have to see that. But I am here. Is there anything after at the end, you'll put in any of the links or, or should I just link them back to the OneDoc?
Yeah, well, we've got lunch right after, and then we'll go back to the main room. So I'll put in the link just back to the main room at the end.
Okay, so they'll come back at 12:25. I'll try to do the share outs for 10 minutes, then we'd have 10 minutes to debrief and close, which will be good.
progress.
Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. I always know when people come back at the very end in a breakout room, like allotted time, that that probably they needed more time, but hopefully that also meant it was a really fertile discussion that you did not want to finish. So I'm going to guess that that felt like not enough time, and it probably wasn't. You might do this much longer with your students, but hopefully it was enough at least to get some ideas out. And I see that a lot of people put different evidence and reasoning into their slides. So what we're going to do right now is share out, and we're going to start with group one. And whether you have one or more spokespeople, you can verbally share your argument. I can share my screen and show your argument, or go to the image if you want, to point out different things in the image. And then we'll have chances for a little bit of questions and or counter arguments for that group before we move to the next one. So if we start with claim one here, and we have Patricia. So if you could unmute yourself, let's give a round of applause for Patricia that's starting us off. And could you please share your group's argument?
We did salvation.
Yeah. So this, okay, yeah. So the one that you were just on was Roger and Santino and Donald.
Claim one was horror.
Yeah.
Okay. This was
I'm Roger. I'll go ahead and take claim one if you want me to.
okay.
ROGR,
Go ahead,
yeah.
Roger.
Well, we didn't have the art right in front of us, but from our recollection, our claim is that horror is the theme most expressed. The first thing we noticed was the facial expressions. For example, the person in the water, the mouth was open. He looked horrified. He was in grave danger. The people on the boat looked horrified. There was a couple of sets of arms extending out, trying desperately to reach the man. And we noticed that their eyes were cast down as if they were really hyper-focused. There just seemed to be a hypersensitivity there that bespoke horror to us. Also, the proximity of the big sharks that appeared hungry. One had its mouth open. And part of our reasoning on that evidence is we're sort of conditioned to be horrified, especially if you're from my generation and you grew up watching Jaws. Just the presence of a shark is now you're terrified by just the mere presence, and especially to have one that's that near with its mouth open would bespeak horror. And finally, we noticed that the water seemed more choppy near or where the small boat was, as opposed to where the bigger ships were. And we just think that the more dangerous water suggested a sense of urgency, or again, a sense of horror, out of control.
Thank you, Roger, and thank you, group one. Let us give virtual applause for group one. Any reactions, questions, or counter arguments for group one?
No counter arguments because those were airtight arguments.
Nice. Santino, that was also your group? Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, good, because I was also actually going to ask if anyone else from group one had anything else they wanted to add. But it sounds like we might be ready to move on to group two, heroism. Do we have a spokesperson to share this argument?
Well, I think Cassandra's unable to use her audio, and I don't see Jesse. So I'm happy to share depending on if that sounds good to all the members, I can jump in.
Thank you.
No problem. So we defined a term, which is that heroism demands an act. And this picture is all about a human action. And so that's our criteria for thinking about heroism as being at the center. So one refutation we might raise for the horror is that the horror isn't the center of the act. The center of the act is human agency in reaction or responding to the horror. And so we have three different arguments. The first is that most of the people in the painting are acting as heroes. You have the three men who are lifting or trying to lift the young man out of the water. You have Watson, who is trying to fight off the shark. Our second argument is that the qualitative assessment of the action is that it is meant to be a heroic action, and that we think that given when this is written, 1778, which is the Age of Enlightenment, the point of this picture is to focus on human agency and dominance over nature. And that's why the theme is central. And so we have, not just most of the people doing heroic acts, but the action that they're doing is intrinsically heroic. Even the man who's in the water is actually giving themselves up. So they're not reaching towards their colleagues who are trying to pull them out of the water. They are, so everyone in the act is in some way or another acting for the good of the whole, even the victim. And that kind of blends together the second and the third argument that we made.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Anyone else want to add on from that group? Awesome. Well, applause for group 2 with heroism. Questions, counter arguments for that group or responses? There's some powerful arguments so far. Well, we will move on to group 3, which is salvation. And it sounds like Alice, Angela, and Patricia are all going to share this. Would you like me to leave this screen up or go back to the image?
You can leave the screen up.
Okay.
Basically, I said before, one of the first things we did was define salvation. So what did salvation actually mean? And we all sort of agreed before we looked up the actual term, just to verify, but that in some way it meant save and somehow to save. We still, and I said, I have to preface this with, this is a classical arrangement in this type of historical scene that you would see. And the pyramidal structure added to that whole thing. The man holding the, looks like a soldier actually, holding the harpoon, almost looks like the Archangel Michael, if you've seen religious pictures where he's pushing down the devil or throwing people out of heaven. So that's pretty classic in that sense. And also the way the figure is floating in the bottom in the rough seas. I think we've all mentioned that, but the sky at the top is so peaceful and blue and sunny, and all of the ship masts, not just, and I know it was referenced before in terms of showing those look like crosses, but they do sort of represent a calming area at the top. And somehow there's a need for him, Watson, reaching up to try to be saved and pulled from the darkness of the sea, that somehow that would form the salvation that he would need. And it's all leading up. And there's a real strong contrast too in who's actually saving him. I can't help but think about the black man in the top who's actually throwing a rope, which no one, we haven't even mentioned, but he's actually showing a rope being thrown down into the water to help with their salvation. And there's a real contrast just in that alone too, between black and white, because the naked body is so white in the dark waters and then pulling him through. So we saw it in different ways of pulling and saving, and each layer has some kind of saving in it. There are some in the back of the boat that seem to not want anything to do with it because they look fearful themselves and afraid of their own safety. But that's it.
Thank you, group 3. Anyone else from group 3 want to add on? Also, let's give a round of applause for group 3. Questions, responses, or counter arguments for that group?
So a counter argument would be, isn't the question of salvation left open-ended? Like it's not at all apparent to me. It's apparent to me that the people in the picture are heroic, but it's not apparent to me that their heroism is going to lead to salvation. I mean, the man might get eaten.
I think see salvation as something separate from heroism here. At least from my point of view, that it's really not about the hero saving him, but more there is heroism in the sense of some of them. What was that?
I think that may have been just a background noise from someone.
Oh, that was something else. Because you can actually, now that I mean, it takes a while for the counter argument to come up, but are they really, is there really a lot of heroism in this? I see 4 men in the boat who actually want nothing to do with leaning over the boat to help, so as you're looking at it more and more, I pulled up a really high resolution picture of it just to kind of see. So it's just very interesting to see the details, because the one behind between the legs where the harpoon is, he's actually looking in fear, and the other 3 sort of huddling together, not wanting to lean over to help anyway. So they're not being heroes at all in that sense. It also reminds me of resurrection images. Like I said, I'm an art history major. I've looked at tons of things like this. So I see a lot of that in a lot of the classical work of American artists that were trying to do what Europeans were doing in terms of these kind of historical images, which never really went very well. Copley is basically a portrait painter. So he's got a few that actually move in this realm, and it's interesting.
Patricia, thank you. And thank you for bringing that lens and expertise in. We'll take one more comment. Mark's raised his hand, and please take a look at Angela's interesting note in the chat as well. So Mark, go ahead.
Patricia, the question I have is almost parenthetical, but it calls on your expertise. The figure in the water, does his nudity and his pigment, is that meant to imply allegorically or metaphorically pre-lapsarian man?
It is, I don't remember all the details because it's a long time since I've sat through an American history, art historians, and she focused a lot on this, and she actually did The Death of General Wolfe by Benjamin West, which really was a deposition of Christ. And when you look at that, you can actually see it through pictures. So there is some sort of parallel, and it's funny, me looking at this today, seeing black and white, I guess my sensibilities have changed because so many things have changed in the world in the last year and a half, that I'm just wondering how this was perceived then in terms of having the black man throwing the rope. Is he at the pinnacle at the top of the pyramid? And is he reaching, is it the shark, the white man, and the black man that we're actually kind of always focusing on? Because he is at the top, even though the pole goes higher. If you look at that triangle, it's really the shark and the whiteness and the man at the top. So I guess it's just some of those things that I'm seeing. Who's saving? Is he reaching for the rope? Because his hand is very close to the rope of Jonas. He's actually reaching toward the rope right there in that middle, just as you go over that first line, the green line, so I don't know. It's a fascinating painting from all of those points of view, but I don't know how I would go further.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to move to the last one because we are getting short in time. This is really fascinating. So let us move on here from cooperation. Did anyone, maybe you, I don't know if you didn't write it, but you discussed group 4?
I think we had someone write it down, but I think they were handwriting it.
Excellent. Sorry, that was my dog. Would the person, thank you, Kristen, the person from group 4 who wrote down, could you please be spokesperson for your group?
Sure. This is Amber. So our group was definitely one that I don't think any of us realized that the time was out when we were suddenly finding ourselves back over here, because we were just kind of digging into deeper discussion. But so our group was on cooperation. And so we discussed just kind of looking at all of the men in the boat and how each of them seemed to be playing an active role in the kind of balancing the effort of saving the man in the water. And so, at first looking at it, you can there are obvious ones, the two men that are leaning over, the man who is then kind of supporting them and holding them up. And then you've got the gentleman with the spear, going toward the shark, and you've got the gentleman with the rope. And so those are kind of the more obvious. And I think it might've been Mark, and I'm trying to remember, I think it was Kimberly, is that the right? Anyway, everybody else in the group kind of pointed out that even the other four men who are kind of, certainly they look physically as though they're not participating or cooperating in the saving of the man. But if you consider a boat, and if everyone were to be on that one side, then that boat then would tip over and everyone is, kind of doomed or at risk of death or injury. But if you consider those men being kind of on that other side of the boat, they're all huddled. Somebody had pointed out in our group when we were discussing, there's no one at the front of the boat. And which is just kind of interesting that they are all huddled in a team of kind of cooperating in a joint effort to save the man, but then also having to balance the boat within the midst of the waves, and the shark, being just as big, if not bigger than the boat, kind of wrapped around. And so there's a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Group 4. Thank you, Amber, for sharing that. I will note there's been a lot of fascinating depictions of the same visual evidence, but different reasoning is leading to very different claims with that. So thank you for that analysis. So give yourselves a virtual round of applause for sharing these arguments, developing these arguments. The last thing, we have just a couple minutes, and I do want to make sure we can even take a few minutes to debrief. So what you're going to do is take a poll, and you're going to share which argument do you think was best. You may not vote for your own group. So no one can vote for their own group. So which argument do you think is best? Which was the strongest argument? Not which one do you agree with, but which do you think was the strongest argument? And so take a moment, I'm going to put the poll in the chat and you can vote. And then in the chat, please put what were some examples of strong arguments you heard. Which one do you think was best? What was strong about it? Even if you didn't vote for that group, if you had, strong arguments you heard from different groups, please put that in the chat. So we'll take just a minute for that. I'm actually going to stop sharing so we can see each other. Right, some votes are coming in, I see.
You just click it once and it does it.
It should. Do you have, I see some people have voted. Were you able to vote?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna give just another 10 seconds, then I will reveal the poll results. Meanwhile, again, feel free to put in the chat your thoughts. And Tiffany, welcome. I'm not sure what time you're on. We're just finishing up. We should be finishing up right now. The class challenge BDL activity, then you're going to be heading to lunch. So I don't know if that matches what your schedule was. And Jesse, welcome back as well. I know you had trouble vote heroism. Yes. All right, I'm going to share the screen and we can see heroism is the winning group. Congratulations, group 2. All groups did receive votes. Horror and salvation were just behind. Cooperation also got some votes. So definitely there were strong points about all of them. And if we had time, what I'd lead you in and what you could lead your students in is really sharing and evaluating what were the strong points of the different arguments. If you have an argumentation rubric, that's a good thing to use in with the voting, and even as they're developing arguments to use it, and then to evaluate. But what we are going to do, I know we have just a minute or so. I'd love to hear if you could just put in the chat, what was this experience like for you as a learner? And how do you imagine your students would experience it? What are your implications for practice? So unfortunately, we don't have time to do a full debrief as we normally like to, but please put in the chat what this was like for you. How might you change it? What are your connections to your own practice, your own content? So Jesse, thank you for sharing that. So again, feel free to put in the chat your debrief. And I want to share just a couple of closing notes. We do have an exit ticket about this session, and I don't know, so I can put that in the chat. And I know you probably will have an exit ticket for the full institute as well. But if you have a chance and can complete the exit ticket, that would be wonderful. And the other things we did want to let you know, I'm going to put this in the chat as well. We do have a week-long graduate class. It is 2 graduate credits. It is August 9th through 13th. We do have in the grad class, we'll have a math group, a science group, ESL, and humanities, and they each will be led by teacher leaders who are teachers in that content area. So you'd get engaged in it specific to your content area. And it is also very hands-on with also time to plan and to lead something of yourself that you plan with your colleagues. So with that, I am going to close out. Our resources are also all linked in the PowerPoint. We have a Google folder of starter resources that has all the activity templates and some examples by content area as well. And our info, I think, is in the OneDoc if you want to reach out to us as well. I'll put my email here as well in the chat. So thank you so much. I'm sorry for keeping you 3 minutes over. And Radley has put in the chat, you're on break and where you need to return to next to the main room. And yes, thank you so much. It's great to meet and work with you today.
And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Marisa, yes, I'm Tiffany Fain. So I guess my time has been totally off today because when I logged in at 10, it seemed as if the presentation was short. I guess it ended around 10:30 or so. And I'm on Central Time. So I don't know. And like it said, to join at 11:40 this session. And so
that must have been Eastern time.
I'm sorry, I should be more clear on the schedule. The schedule is on Eastern Standard Time.
Now that makes sense. I'm just like, everything is.
It's all confused, yes. So
Yeah, okay.
so 11:40 here would have been 10:40 for you to join after a 10-minute break.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're on Eastern. Okay. All right. Sorry about
I'm sorry
it.
about that.
No,
Thank you.
That's on us. I should have made sure it was after each of the timestamps that we have. However, we did record the morning session and we're going to put that link on the schedule so you'll be able to still catch the whole thing.
Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And for everyone who's still here, that's lunch, and we'll be reconvening at 1:15 p.m. Eastern time. The main Zoom link is at the top of the document, which I put in chat, and you should have already. Thank you so much, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Alice. It was great to meet you virtually.
You too.
So
Look forward to more.
yes, that's awesome.
Have a great one.
You too. Cassandra, it's lovely to meet you as well. I'm sorry we couldn't verbally talk, but I was appreciating all of your chat commentary. All right, so Cassandra, I'm gonna hop off now. So I think, do you know where to get to next after lunch? On the one doc, it's just going back to the main room at, I think it's a 1:15 Eastern time. Awesome, thanks.